Since the very dawn of time, human history has been shaped by the spoon. From the mysterious and timeless standing spoons of the Scottish Highlands to the breathtaking vastness of the VLSA. From the fearsome and terrifying battle spoons of ancient Egypt to the miraculously complex microspoons so essential to all modern electronic devices. Throughout history, spoons have pervaded every human endeavour, suffused every facet of mankind's activity and works, except for one, which has remained forever, inexplicably but steadfastly spoonless, until now.
So this is my walking stick spoon, my walking spoon. This project began life about 3 weeks ago when I found this area of coppiced hazel behind me here, and I decided to go and cut myself a piece of hazel and make something. Now the project came about as an intersection of three of my main interests, or three of the major themes of Atomic Shrimp, which is food, outdoors and wood crafting. So we'll have a look at a few of the things that I did to make this spoon. It's been quite hard work because I carved this spoon down from a 10 centimetre diameter log of hazel so that I could carve it as one piece with the bowl. So let's have a look at some of the processes that we followed in making the walking spoon. So I began with a 10 centimetre diameter log of hazel, a fairly straight piece that I cut from an area of coppiced hazel that I found while I was out walking the dog. So the objective was going to be to preserve the full width and diameter of the hazel at one end, but whittle the rest down to actually a walking stick diameter. So I put myself some guide cuts into the side of the hazel log, going about 1/3 of the way through the thickness all the way around. And the reason for this was just so that I would have a guide to how deep I should whittle away and cut, but also so that the chips that I carved off with the axe would come off and be relatively self-contained and free from splitting out of control. So I spent quite a long time actually whittling away at the log with an axe, and in fact with both of my wood carving axes, and that was quite hard work and really made quite a big mess. But we got somewhere in the end. We got a fair bit of material away. Now feel free to post comments if you think there's a better way of doing this. I know there's a better way. If I'd had a decent bandsaw, I would have actually bandsawed off just 2 slices off of the side of the majority of the log, and then rotated it and done another 2 slices, and that would have cut away all of that stuff that I spent a long time whittling at. But I didn't have a bandsaw, so I just hacked away at it with the axe. Now probably the correct tool for this kind of work, if you're doing it by hand, is a draw knife. So I bought myself a draw knife and I tried it out, but unfortunately, even though the one I bought said it was going to be delivered razor sharp and ready to use, actually turned out to be really quite blunt, and I don't have the proper facility for sharpening that at the moment, so I gave up on that. I spent a long time actually sanding away with the flap wheel sanders. Now I've found these things really useful for actually removing wood in a controlled way, especially on curved pieces, and so I spent quite a long time on the flap wheel sanders, but also I sharpened up my spoke shave, and I spent a long time actually whittling away fine shavings with the spoke shave. That gave me a very nice round profile to the handle. I worked a lot of the kinks and irregularities out that way, and then that gave me a nice diameter which was perhaps still a little bit too thick for a walking stick. The next thing to do was to start carving the bowl, and so I started off using gouges and a mallet, but actually I found as I went on it was a bit easier to just use the little hand gouges that I've got, which are I think sharper anyway and finer, but also they're a little bit easier to control and to manage the splitting of the timber. So I carved out the bowl to a rough shape, and then again I went back to the flap wheel sander to shape the bowl completely and make it more spoon-like and more delicate and finer in nature. Now bear in mind this is not a functional spoon, so we aren't going to go for a really fine dessert spoon profile. It still has to be quite durable. It's got to take some knocks and bumps. It's a walking stick, but in the style of a spoon. So it doesn't actually matter if it's a bit thick and a bit chunky. That's the whole point. It's decorative, really, more than anything else. So having shaped the bowl of the spoon a bit, it was then time for lots and lots more sanding. Sanding on the flap wheel sanders and on the belt sander to just remove excess material and get the profile down to the right shape, and then final sanding by hand with increasing grades of sandpaper. I bought a stainless steel ferrule to go on the end of the walking stick to protect the bottom end from soil and damage and fraying. And so that was just a case of sanding down the lower end of the walking stick until it fit the ferrule properly, and then gluing that in place with epoxy. And I think we'll probably put a couple of little pins in there just to hold it on completely. So then we got to the finishing, and I decided to finish it with Danish oil. Now, I haven't actually used Danish oil for a very long time. In fact, I didn't think I'd ever used Danish oil before, but actually the smell of Danish oil took me right back to my childhood at school, and it turns out that Danish oil was the varnish that our woodwork teacher used to give us for finishing our projects. It's got a very natural, waxy, oily smelling aroma, which is actually not too strong and quite pleasant. It soaks right into the wood, but it does dry completely. Unlike some other oils, it dries completely to form almost like a varnish. I will probably give it another 2 coats of Danish oil and then probably a coat of shellac on top. So I'm really pleased with the end result of this. It's come out pretty much as I hoped and expected it might, and so now I've got my walking stick in the shape of a giant spoon, my walking spoon. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.